Flannel's back big time.
Surprise, surprise, surprise.
Oh, no.
Good morning,
Tony Caravan. You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need and not what you don't.
Just sit right back and you'll hear a tale.
It's an excursion into the odd and into the very, very different.
I ain't one yet. This is insane.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I've been so fortunate to have such excellent specimens. Have I said that before? Yes. Just trying to see if you're watching.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
Or keeping track. Tony Caravan with you, as the lady said. Who is the lady by now? When she recorded that, she was, I don't know, out of college or something like that. You know, yesterday was kind of a serious show dealing with a serious topic, and, you know, I watched the show and realized that it was a pretty good, you know, breakdown, overview, you know, pretty much in layman's terms of what's going on, what's happening. By the way, it's 3:28 a.m. Eastern Time on the 28th of January. January's going down as one of the coldest months. But not, you know, historically, you know, and this is, you know, like in recent years, actually for the last couple decades, this flies in the face of all these climate alarmists. I mean, you know, this is the true weather. Now, you know, come March or April or May, they'll like revise the numbers just the same way as they change Wikipedia and do everything else. You know, it's like the lies, the changes of the lies. I just saw a thing today, excuse me, while I scoot around. There's my droid in the background, keeping an eye on me. I guess I am a marionette of the droid. But I see 4.5 million, 4.5 million people have moved over to Getter now. It's a substantial audience, you know, considering, and it does seem to be growing. It's just, I hope that people do it. Like I say, I've got no interest, financial interest, personal interest, political interest. I have no political interest at all anymore. Politics to me is, you know, like I said, there's two things to learn you have to know if you want to understand this show. One, the true marionettes of the media and the politicians, and I believe that wholeheartedly. And two, it's all hypocrisy for profit. Okay? Now, if you understand that, now you can, you know, feel free to continue watching the show. If you don't get that, that doesn't make sense to you. You tuned in to the wrong channel, my friend. But like I said, I have no interest in this Getter thing other than I did open an account there, and I have been posting my links to my videos. I see, and it may have been something that I just didn't notice before, but it seems like they're moving closer to live for the general public on Rumble, because I think they moved it down to the $10 a month. See, it was like it was like a $25 category for live streaming, but I think they moved it down to 10. Now, I may be wrong. It may have always been on the 10, but in their little box that they have popped up on the page for live streaming, and it's unlimited streaming, though there's some kind of storage or bandwidth thing, which I guess I'm not sure exactly what they're going after with that, meaning is that they're going to choke you if you have too many or too long shows or something. But, you know, once they get down to where it's free live streaming, you know, that signals the end of YouTube. Literally. I mean, do you see that? You know, that, do you understand that? I mean, Rumble, just like Getter, has had a tremendous amount of people who have moved over there and are basically using it as their, you know, kind of their primary platform outside of a lot of people are getting back into websites and having some sort of backup server, their own point of origin for their blogs, vlogs, what have you. I myself still maintain the same server I've had. Well, it's not the exact same server. We had a physical colo server in the early 90s, mid 90s. But I've had this additional server since about that time. So I've had a server for about 25 years. That's a long time. A lot of files, trust me. I mean, the archives I have are just out of this friggin' world. Like I say, I've got shows dating back to, I've played them here, my doing podcasts before people knew there was a podcast. I have 20-some-year-old podcasts here recorded that I've had to translate from real audio, right, which no longer really exists as a format, though someone is using the name for some other purpose. This is the end of the coffee can. The so-called bottom, I would say the barrel, but it's made of metal. This giant coffee can. There's the carafe, today's coffee. This is the end of it. Though I have another one unopened sitting in a refrigerator of 100% Colombian. But it's just as well. It's easy. I get like a month out of it. When it gets about down to about a third, sometimes I add like a pack of Kona coffee into it or something just to spruce it up. And a couple sprinkles of Folgers and like a couple teaspoons of Folgers Instant. I know that sounds weird, but it just does something, But anyway, the title of today's show is What Does It All Mean? And flannel is what it's all about, man. Friggin' flannel is what I tweeted. You can see from the camera 2 view outside that it's pretty quiet out there right now. Of course, it is 3:34 in the morning. I went to bed early. I actually technically shouldn't be rolling out of bed till about now. And quite frankly, I'm kind of surprised. There's the first cold truck of the day. I'm kind of surprised that it is this early. You don't know, but now you do know. But today's going to be a flow of consciousness. Anyone who's familiar with my shows knows that periodically I do these shows where I just wing it. So, we're just going to wing it and go all over the place with this. Why not? Mess around, maybe have some fun, you maybe get into some serious things. I don't know. Maybe a little bit of everything. That photo in the background, or, over to the side here, the radio station with those round little things sticking out. They call those pots, and those are the basically volume controls of the various channels. Like when one would be a commercial, your microphone, the whole thing. And that guy with his face ripped apart is me. This was taking this is a picture. This is a very old picture. And this made it to the cover of one of my books, Surrealistic Nightmare, I believe. Let me double check. I have to grab the stack here. Stack of books. My books. See if I have a Surrealistic Nightmare here. Yeah. It made it to the cover of Surrealistic Nightmare. One of my books out of the 10 or 11, if you count this one here. Something Something fell. There it is. I don't know. I tried to fix this chair, and it's really out of control. This is a one-man show. I'm not pretending, to be overly, produced with it, except
Quality, quantity, and variety.
ROCKFLUX.
Let's get this show on the road.
all right. Let's get a little bit serious now. Other than the fact that it is a professional operation. It's just a one-man show, and like I say, Taylor, he's a flow of consciousness. We're just going to talk about things because it's just been too serious, and I'm thrown back, to the days of when I started this thing, maybe when I was more motivated in a sense of like when I was still doing Twitter a couple of years ago. And this idea of being caught up in the scene as if it's some kind of, what you're doing is important, makes a difference. And, that may sound contradictory to things I've said before. But if you watched yesterday's show and the show even before that, the last two shows, and that's what kind of inspired me to go into this direction, what I'm heading right now, is that we have to be very careful if you do want to make a difference. And I mean on the national scene. Be an opinion maker, okay? Not so much an influencer, because I have a problem with that, influencer. That's kind of in that same league as, indoctrination and propaganda and conditioning, influencer. It's like, I don't want to influence anybody, right? But, I might want to make a difference for positive change in somebody's life or something like that. I think that's a better way to put it, and maybe a better way to, to think about it. But the problem that we have now, and it has existed for a while, but we're at this point where it could go really off the rails. And that's why I started talking about Getter and, how they've had this 4.5 million people, just kind of rush to them. And you see this Bongino, officially got kicked off of Twitter. Was it Twitter? No, YouTube, I guess. I don't know if he's already off Twitter. But whatever the case may be. So now he's a Rumble guy. That's his thing. And there's a lot of people on Rumble now who have been, kicked off of YouTube. So that's their home base of operation. That's where they're, originating their webcasts, broadcasts, vlogs, podcasts, whatever you want to call them. And, and that's growing just the same as Getter. So you have these two formats, and like I said, I'm new to Getter. I just set up. I have a couple of posts, literally just a couple. But I've gone through, and I've followed, I don't know, maybe 4 dozen people, and I probably have about 3 dozen people following me. I noticed Rudy Giuliani was following me yesterday. I don't know if he still is. But I mean, I just got on a couple of days ago. And the thing is, and what we all have to think about, is that we don't want to dilute our means of communicating with one another and communicating to other people. And we run that risk of doing that right now more than ever before. I mean, the media has done it to itself. There's far too many media, and I've said this on countless occasions as well. I mean, in the year 2022, why do you have ABC, NBC, CBS, PBS, Fox, NPR, right? CNN, right? MSNBC, OAN, right? I mean, and the list goes on. Then you have the financial networks that have turned in pretty political. So you got Bloomberg and CNBC and Fox Business, right? And there's others there. And so you have, an audience out there that wants information. I mean, that's basically what it's about. There's two reasons why you turn on, some sort of box that's got, shadows on the wall, to take it back to the Greeks. All right. Because you are either interested in some sort of tale, whether it's like the title of one of my previous shows, Sound and Fury, signifying nothing, or which is entertainment of some sort, boredom beater, or you're actually looking for something specific, right? And so, like, for example, getting into specifics, I might as well just get this out of the way before, we continue this conversation. Sorry, consider this almost a commercial break, but not really. This is,
The Weather Watch Forecast.
Anyway, this is the NOAA satellite from literally moments ago. So this is the view of what it looks like in the former United States. Those lines of delineation, like I say, this whole Ukrainian thing is about over on the other side. People tend to draw lines on continents, and then they suddenly become, and the younger the person is, and actually a lot of the functionally illiterate actually think those lines exist. But they don't exist, really. But anyway, as you can see, there's a flow from the north. And if you let's start over on the Pacific Northwest, and let's look at the North Pacific. You see those clouds, how they are moving north. And then it seems that that's curving down, and so we're getting this, I wouldn't necessarily call it a polar vortex, but it's like there seems to be these clouds coming down from the north, from a Canadian, and perhaps, originating in the Arctic, in the midsection of the country, coming down through the plains. And there is snow, and you can see as it gets lighter, this isn't the greatest. This is our taxpayer dollars at work. But as you could almost make out the mountain formations if you look closely. Okay, as you get towards like Colorado. See that? You could see the Rockies. Anyway, so you have this northern flow coming down. And then you have from the, down, if you look down to the Baja Peninsula, and so you've got that southern Pacific flow, which is bringing that warm Pacific air, and then the same thing is coming all the way across the Gulf region, including warmer Gulf air, and that's shooting across all the way to the east. But some of that, there's kind of a delineation line as well, where the northern flow meets this west to east flow that comes in through the Ohio Valley into the mid-Atlantic states, and it's all heading eastward. Now, originally in the forecast, like, for example, where I am, in, somewhere, east of the Ohio Valley towards in the mid-Atlantic states, we were supposed to be getting snow, several hours ago. But, it looks like that's not going to happen for another hour or so. And there's a possibility, a strong possibility, that it's going to snow where you see, if you look at from, say, Indiana, Ohio, into western Pennsylvania, and then you go south to Virginia, and then eastern Pennsylvania, into South Jersey, New York, and then work your way up the coast, because that's where this whole thing is headed. There's a possibility, and there have been, when you put all the models together, it looks like, I'm sorry for dragging on about this, but you may be interested in knowing this because it's a weekend, that there may be blizzard conditions along the coasts, particularly if you were planning on going to any of those coastal areas. For any odd reason, this time of year, people usually don't go out there. But this is no weekend to walk the beach, in Cape Cod, or, to be in Nantucket. So anyway, I'm just, that's just what's heading your way is basically a snowstorm. Some people will actually get a foot of snow. Others will get probably, a couple of inches. But that's literally, we're talking from people who are going to get 1 to 3 inches to people that are going to get upwards of, close to a foot of snow. But it's mostly going to be directed towards the eastern portion of the U.S., except, again, with the exception being the high mountain areas, the Rockies and the usual suspects out there in out west, So if that, if you happen to be in one of those areas, beware. Also, January's ending very cold, and it is predicted that Florida could be getting some weather that's close to the freezing mark in some spots. So, you orange growers down there, be aware of that as well.
The Weather Watch Forecast.
All right, we got that out of the way. I just thought I'd look it up, and I was curious for myself. I just want to see where things are headed. But, it is amazing in one regard. It actually kept me in the house yesterday because I had walked a few days ago. Like in my neck of the woods, it's basically, fortunately it's not raining because I have roof problems, if you've watched this show. But the nighttime temperatures tonight and tomorrow where I am, tonight's going to be 5 degrees, forecast to be 5 degrees, and tomorrow night's forecast to be 3 degrees. And I think it's those nights, I think that's when Florida, as far down south as Florida, you have to worry. Because this cold is going to, if you don't get a lot of snow in the Northeast, because it's touch and go. It depends on which way the wind blows, or literally. But if it, no matter what happens, it's going to be cold. So if you've got crops, even if you're one of those homesteaders like I am, because it happens to me every year in May. You think April showers bring May flowers, but what ends up happening is, here's my garden. I ended up covering the darn thing with burlap and cardboard and everything else. So, like I say, when that stuff happens, and I keep a book. Well, this is I keep a little journal book, all right? And it's a garden journal. And so it's the temperature, what happened, when it rained, when I planted a thing, blah, blah, blah. And it's so I could look back and see, progress of my seeds, growth, and from year to year, get an idea of what's going on. And I'm telling you, it's just been getting, the frosts have been later and later every year. In an area where that shouldn't happen, at all. So I don't really understand, what's going on. I mean, this is pretty much what it still looks like outside my front window. And we're supposed to get more snow today. But I also have this thing that I wanted to put up. Forgot that I had this. Oh, this doesn't show PDF files, so forget that. I have a PDF file. I'll give you. I'll give you the link for it. Not today because I'm not set up to do that. I mean, I could do it, but of a March calendar, wall calendars. I make a calendar every month, and I like to put them on. I have them all over the place. I have one in my bedroom, one on my wall down here. I even have a miniature one in my bathroom. And it's the idea of knowing the date and visualizing it to me. I'm not carrying an app around. I don't carry a cell phone around with me all the time. And so I have clocks on the wall. I have analog clocks and I have calendars still. Why not? And I enjoy making them because I have the graphics computers. I might as well use these things for something. That's one of the reasons I do this show is because I have this get up. I mean, I'm retired now, basically. I write these books. I've done these songs. I don't really have, there's not other things I do. But I have all this equipment, so I might as well put it to use. But yeah, that's me. I started in radio when I was in high school. Senior in high school was my first radio job. And that's what a radio station board looked like. In fact, that was a newer one. There were 2 studios in that at that radio station, and the primary one where I worked was in the basement, and the board actually was like more primitive than that. That was like the newer station, the FM. We were simulcasting AM and FM at that time, because FM people still didn't know what to do it, but they were getting it. They knew something was coming. And those things that look like 8-track tapes, they're not 8-track tapes. They're actually what they called carts, and each one of those contains a commercial. And you would put those into a machine, a player, and push a button, and it would play the commercial, and then it would loop and be set up so the next time it's played, it's already what they call queued up. And it could play again. Somebody who knows radio knows these words. Somebody who doesn't is like, what are you talking about? Queued up, cart machine. What are you talking about? Radio days. Yeah, that's it. And there's a turntable there behind my back. And all that peeled off stuff is just me playing Salvador Dali a little bit for my surrealistic cover. I design my own everything. I have archives of graphics that I'm pouring coffee right now that you can't imagine. I was talking to somebody about a couple days ago about that. I said, when I'm gone, I've got terabytes and terabytes of all these files. I have all these things, and I figured out all different unique ways of wiring and hooking up and doing all this crazy stuff. I mean, I literally have a full reproduction of a broadcast station here. I have a 3-camera setup, all right, currently. 3 cameras that I could broadcast simultaneously. You're seeing camera 2 up there, but I have camera 3 that I could put online at any given time. I have the ability to take live phone calls, put that person on the air, and hear them in my headphone and talk on the microphone while they can hear me and you can hear them. I mean, it's basically, it took me a while to get that set up in this particular location. A great studio playback system. And I have the ability to go live on the air. And I don't mean on the air. I mean, I have an antenna, okay, in my attic. And I have a transmitter, a small transmitter, that I can transmit and broadcast if I wanted to. And I have all that. I have that. I've tested it already. I've used it to broadcast into my backyard. All right, so far, just in testing it, which is legal to do that. But like if the fit hit the shan or something like that, I'm actually literally prepared to be, the guy on the air, the only guy on the airwaves, telling people what's happening and stuff when everybody else's power goes out. And I have power backup and ways of keeping that alive, if I so desire. But, if I keel over tomorrow, people look at this stuff. They have no idea what it is, And how I have all this stuff,
The only station that matters.
tied into the computers and stuff. They just would look at these as, oh, there's some computers here. We'll sell, they sell the dead guy's stuff, right? Somebody buys a computer. They don't know what, look at some of the stuff in it and erase it and then load on some games or whatever it is. Auction stuff off for $25, or something. Basically $50,000 recording, broadcast recording, TV, radio, broadcast studio equipment, recording studio too. I've recorded 50 songs here in multi-track. Not just using the software, but the hardware, having physical graphic equalizers and all sorts of, limiters and things that, things you find in recording studios. And sometimes I look at that and it's like, oh, what a waste. It's the accumulation. This is, like I said, today's show is like,
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
this is just a flow of consciousness. We'll talk about some things. We'll get onto a tangent maybe. We'll see how it goes. If you're just getting up, pour yourself some coffee and join me. It's 4 a.m. exactly right now. I just looked up at the clock. Eastern time, 4 a.m. But we accumulate these things, whatever are. It's just like tools, And I have a little mini workshop out in the back too, where I've started to accumulate some tools, And it's like the things even I use some of the wiring and electrical type of tools, needed to, wire all this stuff and make all this stuff work. But I have gardening tools, and then I have tools to fix things. And I've got this project to repair my roof because I have a leak up there, and things you discover along the way, little tips and tricks. But all this stuff gets lost. And that gets back to how I started this show in saying, when I was talking about Getter and Rumble and people leaving Twitter and stuff, is that people have to make up their minds because everything is being diluted. All right? It's watered down, diluted. Not as in delusional, because everything is all we're all delusional now. I mean, people are just out of their minds. It's like this Ukrainian thing, this whatever, endless cold that people have. Can't talk about it. Yeah, it's all delusional stuff. Diversionary stuff. But no, it's like we're watering down communications. It's like there are too many voices, but but what is the message? You see? And so this is a failure of the technology. It's a failure of YouTube. In other words, what happened was the Wall Streeter types, the people wanted to monetize when they saw that the internet had potential for making money. All right. They swooped in all of these hawks, right? And basically VCs. And they saw, hey, there's billions of dollars to be made here. And the concept, maybe a lot of people don't know, but I think most people by now understand the VC concept. You overpay for 10 companies, but you hope that one of them, is going to yield, 50 times, the money you put out. So you don't care about losing, the money, the billions or the millions you put out for those 9 that failed. Because you made 50, you still increased on the one that was a success. You increased 50-fold on an investment that was only 10, say you put 10 million out. Say you gave everybody $1 million, right? 9 of them failed. You lost $9 million, but the other one with 1 million ended up producing 50 million. Okay. And it's usually bigger dollars than 1 million. But anyway, so all these guys, and girls and companies and whatever, they all jumped into this and decided to, okay, and then everyone wanted to be monetized. And so the whole thing just kind of exploded, right? Then it crashed, but then the dust settled. And then which, one could argue that the crash was almost intentional. Was because usually when there's a crash, what it does is it shakes out all of the average person, and the people who remain end up being the major players, and then it's no longer open to the average, average Joe or Jane, whatever, and that's just the way it goes. Now, that's a generalization because there are always exceptions. I mean, to this day, there's still somebody who something goes viral or something happens and suddenly a nobody becomes a somebody and has a ton of money and success and a big audience. But generally speaking, when you have these crashes, it's usually either orchestrated or if it happens randomly, it shakes out all of the average folks, and what's left are the big players, the major players, the same type of people, who always seem to run things, right? You don't have a lot of major players losing their shirts, okay? They just lose a lot of money, but they usually get it back just like the VCs, tenfold afterwards. And the same in 2008, in that whole crash, real estate crash. I mean, since then it shook out all the smaller players and, and it hurt a lot of average people, right? But then the market just jumped up to ridiculous heights, and the major players have made more money, since the crash than they ever than in the history of the market. In the early 90s, the Dow Jones was in the 2,500 range. Okay? And then it jumped in the Trump administration over 25,000. I mean, and just kept rising up to where it's 30 now. I know there's the markets are the so-called VIX, the volatility index, is pretty high right now. So we're seeing a lot of fluctuations market-wise now, if anyone of people who follow that. And those who've invested in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, have seen their coin go up to in the 60s about 2 months ago, and now it's down in the 30s. So you've lost you've watched it get cut in half. My personal opinion on that is I don't think crypto is the answer. I mean, there's all kinds of interesting, highly intelligent people involved in that whole thing, including using blockchain technology for other things as well, other than just, decentralizing how we deal with what we call money or, coin. But it's digital and it's contingent upon, the grid, and nothing like a solar flare, CME or anything messing with that grid, or even hackers for that matter, or just the fact that the grid is in really bad shape, or a really bad winter and ice storm and trees falling just on the wrong places, or old transformers blowing and and stuff like that. The problem with the civilization today, and that's the word, our civilization, is that it's built, one on top of the other, but it's not. We haven't improved things. It's the same as with why I say how we watered down information and information media. In other words, on our grid we deal with, we react, we're not proactive. So we wait for there to be a power failure, a tree to knock over some power lines, and then suddenly they call in, linemen from adjacent states to come and get the power back up. Meanwhile, 1 million people are freezing to death. Happens almost every year, or at least every other year. But we never learn from it. When there's a storm surge or something like that, the Army Corps of Engineers come in and then they fix the levees, but they don't put in a levee that can withstand the next storm, right? So I had a show on that before. I talked about it. They just build stick homes out of 2x4s and aluminum siding, and they're rectangular. And when winds come facing these winds, when these winds come at them, the house blows over like the big bad wolf story you tell your kids. Instead of using Buckminster Fuller concept of like geodesic domes or any kind of roundish thing to withstand like 400-mile-an-hour winds. It's like, so what? Have the corners facing, the storms be rounded. Everybody in Tornado Alley should have a geodesic dome, for crying out loud. I mean, if people want to live there and keep that real estate, there are solutions. But we don't seem to use our technology to come up with alternatives, right? It's funny, if you've ever been to Washington, D.C., and excuse me, I scoot my chair over. If you've ever been down to D.C. is where I've seen it the most. I mean, I've been around a lot of different places. But where you go through you're driving down a road and you go through it's like kind of an underpass while the other street goes straight across, so you don't have to have as many red lights. You just happen to have the red lights or the stop signs if you're exiting off going to that cross street. You understand what I'm saying? In other words, a road is here, but the road dips underneath almost like a bridge, so that the other road people going this way, there's no need to constantly have all these red lights and stops, so that people in this, can just go, under the dips and over and just keep traveling. You see that, that's a DC thing, if you understand. I lived and worked in DC. And I've seen it in other places, but it's there. I've seen it there the most. And it works really well. Way better than those circles over in Italy. They have one of those in Atlantic City. I don't know if it's still there, but they used to have like circles. They tried it there too. This idea to keep the flow of traffic going, and it just becomes like, what happens is people who are unfamiliar with it are like, what do I do? But what I'm getting at is that in a place like Tornado Alley, people don't want to give up their land, their real estate. But what they haven't done there is come up with innovative ways in which to restructure their cities. And it's the same along the Gulf Coast and Florida and areas, hurricane prone areas, that you would expect to see these, breakthrough architectural designs, And so, I would envision, this would be a Herculean effort, but it should have happened, this should have been started like 50 years ago, and it would be done by now. And, now it's too late. No, people aren't going to do it. But, the city should have been basically built along these areas that have historic, like I say, Tornado Alley or historic hurricanes come through every X amount of years, that the structures or the way the city is planned out, it should take into consideration the highest number of highest survival rate of both people, which is the most important thing, and structures and businesses. And they should have been built in such a way so that it's seamless and it didn't seem that big a deal. So it's like even under the Capitol building in Washington, there's, it's like the underground. You go into the subway, it's not that many stairs down, right? But it's underground. A tornado is going to come and it's, it's going to take, it's going to go down a couple of feet maybe. You see? So that if I were in Kansas, if I were building Kansas, Oklahoma, parts of, I don't know, Texas Panhandle and a little bit eastward or whatever, Tornado Alley, that general region, I've been through there many a time. I would have originally had things like, restaurants, malls, schools, and things like that all underground. And I don't mean like, buried underground. So like people are, living in some dank, dark thing. That's what architects and engineers do. They come up with ways and means of figuring out how to create things and how to make it seamless so that, it's a subtle, incline or decline, and that everything's fine. And that, so the playground and the courtyards and stuff would be above ground, and that kind of stuff. And the living spaces, like the entertainment, right? So you could, but you wouldn't lose your house. you would just basically lose like your backyard and your patio furniture. You grasp what I'm saying? And, but it wouldn't be like that weird movie with Christopher Walken, where it was completely underground. Speaking of which, let's see. This thing. Let me to do something here. Just for the laugh. It's always fun to do this. Where is it? Should be playing. It's not playing. What did I do wrong? Can't find it. Oh. Huh. I guess we lost that for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know where I put it. Well, and anyway, that movie where Christopher Walken, thought the world was ending and they lived in an underground shelter, and then they came up, when they thought it was finally safe. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about bunkers. I'm talking about architecture. All right? Engineering feats. Using technology, building techniques, aesthetics, right? Design features to create a world where we can live and survive and thrive. And that was a theme last year in a lot of my shows was it's not a matter of just surviving, it's a matter of thriving. It's just like I point out this year's show, the theme is happiness in general. That should be the goal, happiness. You really look around and look at the stuff that government's doing, the media's talking about, and even the vloggers and everyone else. Is it really happiness? Is that the pursuit of happiness? Are they really talking about happiness as an end goal? No, it's like poking fun at somebody. It's about politics, cult of personality. We got to take power, seize power from the other guys. Do you see what I mean? These people are evil. These people are good. This, that, the other. And it's like, whoa, wait a second. What about just happiness? Let's just all try. It's like that guy Joseph said, follow your bliss. All right. That was his thing. Can't think of the guy's full name. It's just my mind's blank. It's 4:20 a.m. Eastern time right now. So yeah, it's a little bit hard. But yeah, follow your bliss. And I don't see us moving towards happiness. And instead we have this watered down social media, or I would say just media landscape, because it includes social media, what they call the mainstream media. They used to be called, for a little while, they called this new media. But people have to make up their minds. In other words, if you go to Getter, make Getter the thing because it's less of a censorship platform than Twitter. And go to Rumble because it's less of a censorship platform than YouTube. Things don't exist. People forget because they don't remember. MySpace, YouTube, or, in other words, MySpace was replaced by like Facebook, I guess. I don't know if that would be the comparable way of looking at it. Yeah. And so these things don't have to last forever. But there's this feeling, and it's particularly, it's a 21st century, oddity, that you notice that it's the same kind of music. There's all the sameness. Like this inability or fear of change, I notice. It's like, well, YouTube has to always exist. It's like YouTube. I don't want to leave my Twitter channel. Whereas in other decades, literally, and I've been through many, within one decade, the music changed. The style of music changed three or four times. The fashion, the design, what people wore changed several times. The technology, the things people use, they changed. Steve Jobs introduced the iPod, which basically became the iPhone, the smartphone, okay? And it's like people are still using it. The same thing. All they're doing is like putting a little better camera on it and a better chip here, and you see what I mean? But that was the iPod was a transition from basically the CD player, and the CD player was a transition, right? From cassettes and albums and stuff. And so now albums, come in are kind of like retro, so people are buying records. In fact, speaking of it, I get these goofy catalogs that they send to people, which are really horrible because they just prey on the poor. But you see all these record players now that they're pushing. And they have them at, when I mentioned this the other day on the show, they have them at Five Below. They have one at Five Below for $25. And then Walmart is selling them too. And they're selling albums now, but the albums cost like $20 or $30. But you could buy like Fleetwood Mac's Rumors at Walmart now. Album, the record, the vinyl. But it's like 20 some bucks or $30 or something. Which is cool, and if that's your thing, I'm all for it. I've been like teetering back and forth about whether or not I want to do that. Because, I'm a little bit bored. But there's part of me is, as I also started talking about, and again, this show.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
This is just me babbling and flow of consciousness. So this is completely, someone who watched yesterday's show and watching this is like night and day. Though it's neither. This is a weird time. It's 4:25 a.m., so it's neither night or day. But, when you are bored, the gardening season's coming up, and I spend a lot of time out in my backyard, 7 months of the year. So it's just the doldrums of winter right now, and especially this winter's been, particularly cold, which flies in the face of all of these climate crisis type of people. It's just like, it's a kick in the head, like Dean Martin said in that one song. January's going down, and it really looks this way in the forecast. Literally, January is going to end where I think the entire month was more or less below freezing. I really do. Or at or about. I don't think it got much above the 40s, which is what it should be in, this latitude, and I'm not in the Northeast region. This isn't Vermont. This isn't, Connecticut, upstate New York, or even Pennsylvania, northern Pennsylvania, or anything like that. So that's one thing people forget. And you'll notice, well, it's too early, and I don't know how long I'm going to keep this show going. I'm trying to keep these shows a little bit shorter. I don't know if that will help more people to be more comfortable watching them or not. I understand people don't have the time. See, I have the time. It's 4 a.m. What am I going to do at 4:26 a.m.? I'm going to go upstairs and watch the playback of this. It's entertaining. My cat will sit on my lap and, there's nothing else to do. I'm not tired enough. I'm drinking coffee. I'm not going to go back to bed. And I slept like 8 hours. So what is, it's like I'm on a schedule. But what I was going to say is that camera 2 view is there are 2 coal-fired electric plants up the hill, about, I don't know how many miles from here, maybe 10, 20 miles. And people don't understand that, in coal country, in northern latitudes, and northern latitudes mean anywhere from even West Virginia on up, which is coal country. But then you could go over to, Montana and places like that as well. And around northeast Pennsylvania, that's coal country. And so, that's how we get electricity and heat, in the wintertime. That and natural gas, fracked gas, whether we like it or not, and oil. Like I say, oil, you can't get more organic than oil, right? It comes from the ground. It's organic. It literally is organic. It's plant matter, and So, yeah, this is the weather I've always remembered. You live long enough seeing that snow pile out there that's been on this show for the entire week is reminiscent of me growing up and just how cyclical the weather is. And like this people today who have no, like I was saying, how everything's sameness, that everyone, there's you have a couple of years of where it's hot summers you have a mild winter, and suddenly these people it's climate crisis, whatever. And I'm going like, you don't understand. This is a planet. It's a big planet. It's spinning, and it's, being dragged by the sun at unbelievable speeds through space. And there are short-term cycles and long-term cycles. And if you live long enough, you see some of the longer cycles, which are really short cycles compared to the, 400-year and multi-thousand-year cycles. But we're converging right now, and I'll be dedicating many shows, I think, later on this year to that. Though I do advise you to go visit suspiciousobservers.org, Ben Davidson's site, or, the Diehold Foundation, which is Douglas Vogt's site, VOGT. And suspiciousobservers.org, and look about their research and what they're talking about, what cycle we're in right now. Also, Adapt 2030, a guy named David Dubine runs that site. If you're one of those people looking for something to, a rabbit hole to go down, but based on people who present things, in a serious research, done the research, put it that way. It's not like The Unexplained or something weird like that. It's not entertainment. These guys actually researched this and, documented it. But be that as it may, yeah, I think from a standpoint, the reason things aren't being done and why our civilization is so fragile is because we've allowed the media and the politicians, to be these marionettes of this corporatocracy that's taken over. The opportunists that like I say, when you had the .com crash, the opportunist that came in and swept everything up and took over. And it's like the same in 2008 when you had that whole crash of the real estate market, the Wall Street, insanity, the people that swept in and profited on that and are still profiting to this day. And of course, there were the same people when, back in the 80s and, when the savings and loans, we have these, that's the nature of the beast, that you're going to have these crashes, right? And then recoveries. The only difference recently is that the Fed has kind of like cheated in that they're propping up things, and they believe they could. Their idea is that now that we have digital, used to be, the big criticism used to be, oh, it's fiat currency, it's paper money, they're just printing money, and there's going to be a day of reckoning, right? And there's these guys out there who've been like talking about, the big crash is coming. They've been saying this for like, forever, and it just never comes, right? And now with digital, they don't even bother printing the money anymore. So we still talk about money supply in a sense of, but it's like there's more money's been like infused into the economy, I think, in the past couple of years than over the past, I don't know how many decades. That's how insane it is. Like in a couple of years has like surpassed like decades and decades and decades. And they're able to do this because of digital currency. So in a sense, I was trying to explain this the other day, that people see cryptocurrency as like a replacement for, the central bankers, right? The Fed, and this. What I'm trying to tell you is that the central bankers already have like cryptocurrency, but it's just not cryptocurrency in the way in which you think of it in terms of mining, and all of the and this peer-to-peer transactions and all this other kind of stuff, and all the other things that go into this algorithmically, et cetera, et cetera. No, it's digital currency and it's encrypted. Okay, so it's a cryptocurrency that's digital, and so overnight they can have this encrypted transference of millions of dollars to various participating, the banks that make up the Federal Reserve System across the U.S. They can transfer these funds, right, digitally, that do not exist, that they create out of thin air. They don't have to bother mining them. They don't care about a limited amount, and they really don't care of the value of it, because the value of the dollar, despite all of this craziness that goes on and all the naysayers and stuff, it goes up, it goes down, but these bankers and the economy just seems to just keep pushing on. You see? These are intelligent people. It's like the government. People talk about, and I've even said it. I said, the Ukraine, that's where all the real hackers are. It's not Russia. It's the Ukrainians that you got to worry about. That's hacking land, right? Which is just another reason why we shouldn't be giving them any kind of support whatsoever. But watch yesterday's show. It's a much more serious show where I get into the specifics. But what I'm saying is that, just like people are afraid of people hacking the government or hacking the grid and stuff, outside bad actors, they don't understand that we, meaning this country, well, we have our set of hackers too. And we have some of the best hackers, out there. If we didn't, we wouldn't have made it this far. The Chinese or the Ukrainians or even the Iranians would have taken us down. People don't think about that. Like, there's a war going on every day in so-called cyberspace, right? And these battles are being fought, and you have no idea. Banks are being hacked all the time. They don't admit it because they don't want people to be afraid to put their money in the bank, because if they found out they lost, that bank was hacked for X amount of millions of dollars, you might be afraid to have your money there. So they don't even report it. And it doesn't really matter. And then the Fed just, transfers those funds to replace it at zero interest rate. And then they've taken off this whole idea where you used to have to, they were allowed, a bank was permitted to loan 10 times the amount of money they had on deposit. But I think they basically either raised that ceiling or just eliminated that ceiling. Meaning a bank can just make a loan because it's all digital now anyway, right? That it doesn't really matter. And so that's the kind of world we live in. And a lot of people can't comprehend that, what's going on. So that's why I say, I don't put a lot of faith in cryptocurrency, because of its, vulnerability to the sun, to the magnetic field, to a CME, to an EMP, right? Or just a winter storm knocking down the grid. A very aging grid, and our this reactionary policy that we've taken in the U.S. instead of a proactive approach. They talk about an infrastructure bill, but it really has nothing to do with any of the things I mentioned before, like building, a new New Orleans, right? A city built, on raised above, the highest possible storm surge. You see? A city you would see in a drawing by, on the cover of a science fiction magazine. Because people look at that and they say, oh, that would be science fiction. We can't do that. And that's the problem we have today. It's like people will watch a science fiction movie. They'll watch The Matrix. They'll watch Star Trek. They'll watch Star Wars. They'll watch whatever. All right? But when it comes down to it, and they'll adopt, the technology. I mean, let's face the facts. Right here in my hand, right, this little device from Star Trek, was the inspiration for the flip phone, which was the first phone, and then ultimately the smartphone. But we've stopped doing that, and so there's a generation now that's so upset they think that the smartphone is the greatest thing in the world, and the apps are great, and these games, and that's their whole life, and they can't see, did they, it's almost as if every student should be forced to see the movie Minority Report or something where Tom Cruise is doing this, and holograms and this, in other words, the elimination of these smartphones. We got to get out of this. You can't use the same stuff for 15 years. And like I say, I understand Facebook. Okay, people, you want to use it to show pictures of their grandkids, to their grandparents, and hey, look, here's what I had for dinner. And there's and businesses that are too cheap or too stupid, I hate to use that word, but functionally illiterate, to design their own website, want to use Facebook as their business site or their event. These people that use it for events and bands that are too cheap to create their own site. You know what I mean? I mean, that's what is Facebook? It's band sites, event sites, right? And then a bunch of business or service type things, people that just are too lazy to build their own websites. The internet is basically designed to be a collection of websites. People don't want to do it because they're too lazy, because they don't want to, what does that say about them and their company and their personality if they're not willing to go through, well, it's too much trouble to have to update it. And But otherwise, it's just a bunch of people sharing family photos. So let Facebook be Facebook. I don't really care about Facebook. I don't criticize it for that much, but that's what it is. Let's face it. But, Twitter is this place where people have this social discourse, all right? Well, it's time Getter takes its place, because Twitter is basically in violation of the First Amendment, right? And Getter is a pro-First Amendment. And the site has been built out pretty damn nice. I looked at it, and like kicked the tires of it pretty intensely. And it's like, yeah, it's ready. It's ready for prime time. And 4.5 million people already agree. Now, some people have criticized Rumble because, it does seem there's a little bit of a delay. I don't know if Rumble really has the bandwidth the connectivity that, Google's massive network, Alphabet, has been able to provide for YouTube. So, but it's getting there. And it would get there a lot quicker if people would just move to it. And so it's time to just end Twitter and end YouTube, And by doing that, what happens is you take down traditional media with it, because they're reliant on these other things, and then they become blindsided. It's like they were blindsided by Joe Rogan beating Hannity, Tucker, and CNN and all these other people, combined in viewership. And now they're trying to go after them, right? And so, that's how you do a thing. But people don't have that intestinal fortitude, They're afraid, right? Well, you have to, you can't live your life. You have to take a stand at some point in your life. If you're going to be you don't, in other words, the country's in the state it is today, and I said this yesterday, isn't because of CNN, MSNBC, or Fox or whatever. It's because of you, the people who have failed to take a stand and have a stick-to-itiveness, take the risk and say, I'm going to, like I said, you could keep your Twitter account, just stop using it. You could keep your YouTube account, just stop using it. And go and build these new platforms. If you're that type of person. I compared it to the person who quit smoking but keeps one cigarette in their underwear drawer. I used to know like a girl like that. She always had a cigarette hidden somewhere, but she quit smoking. Right? But it was like her safety thing or something. I don't know what was going on in her head. Man, she had a body like you couldn't imagine. But anyway, remind me. Sharon Stone. She was like Sharon Stone body. But anyway, yeah, that's it. And if people don't do that, well, then we're just going to further go, this dystopian society that's already, happening all around us. The Mad Max world, like out in California, and train robberies and, the weekend crimes in Detroit, Chicago, and all these places. Well, that's just going to keep spreading and spreading and spreading. This opportunistic looting, the smash and grab, right? All of this stuff. You've got all these, people who are supposedly law men and women who are just looking the other way and allowing criminals to do whatever they want to. Right? It's the wild, wild Western civilization, former Western civilization, former United States. But like I tried to explain to people, the Constitution still exists. It's under glass. Okay? It's just that it's there. And whether or not it rises from the ashes like the phoenix, okay, Whether or not the First Amendment is been violated, is terms of service have replaced it. The government is basically not following the Fourth Amendment. Okay? But that doesn't mean that those things don't still exist. They're there. And they can be revived at any given time. We don't need to have a new government, you see? But what we have now is a former United States, and Western civilization has fallen. And it's up to you, the individual, on whether or not those things are revived and that phoenix rises from the ashes. But certainly what we have today is not a constitutional republic. And to sit there or stand there or wherever you are and pretend that, say, oh, this guy's crazy. No, we don't. Now, maybe you live in some bubble somewhere, some isolated little community or hamlet, and you're not seeing that stuff. Well, good for you. Congratulations. I found a place, it's like, that's cheap, and it's, I'm somewhat free to do what I want to do, and, But the idea is that, don't go talking the talk if you're not willing to walk the walk. And that means you got to go on Getter, get involved. You got to go on Rumble and use it as your primary platform. And support the people on there and get involved in that. And your goal should be to topple mainstream media. It means you have to stop watching Fox. I'm sorry, you may like Tucker Carlson, or you may like, whatever, Shemp, Hannity. He reminds me of Shemp of the Three Stooges. You may like him, or you may like Rachel Maddow, whatever your preference is. Or those weirdos on CNN. I mean, I don't want. I cut the cord a year and a half ago, I guess. Finally, I stopped watching news a couple of years ago. I know what's going on because I keep abreast of things, but I mean, I don't watch the news. But you have to, you've got to make those people meaningless. In other words, the corporatocracy is holding up those strings, but you're supporting the corporatocracy. You're supporting the media. You're supporting the politicians. When you give a campaign donation, that money goes to support the media because it goes to commercials, and then that you pay Rachel Maddow's salary. All right? When you campaign contributions come from the corporatocracy. So there are, all politicians, Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, Greens, whatever, commies, socialists, whatever you want to call them, they're all basically controlling the politicians through lobbyists, K Street, right? Campaign donations. They write the bills. They put in the amendments that favor them. And then you become this girl in this black jumpsuit. You become a marionette of a marionette, a puppet of a puppet. It's a very important graphic. I made that. And it's like, it's really puts it all in perspective. Just like this one does. Right? Because I don't care who you follow and what you believe in. Hypocrisy, it's hypocrisy for profit, man. All right? And I said it yesterday, and I'll say it again too. There's this talk about Trump trying to create some kind of app and this, that, the other. It's, people have got to get on this guy's case and tell him, no, we don't need the water to be, to dilute it, to water down the thing just because you want to have it branded with your name or something. We don't need a gold toilet seat thing. Okay? It's cool if that's your thing, go ahead. I don't begrudge anybody, living some kind of weird life like that. If you want to be that way, if bright and shiny objects is your whole world, then go for it, But the point of the matter is, why don't you somebody needs to tell Trump, just open up an account on Getter and get it over with. All right? In other words, he's standing in the way of progress. He's propping up the media. You always thought there was some weird thing, like he always had to mention CNN. Do you understand? If he would have not mentioned CNN in his rallies and his tweets, they would have vanished a long time ago. Yeah, I got to wonder about that. I still have a problem with him doing that. And I think it's time that, Trump stops talking about those people and just moves over to Getter. And just forget it. That's how media falls apart. When you ignore the bully loses his power. You see? When you ignore the liar, you don't pay attention to the lies, then in other words, politicians Nancy Pelosi becomes unimportant if nobody's watching her. Right? Who cares about Adam Schiff if nobody's listening to him? He becomes a non-person. People go, who? Right? CNN apparently lost their contract with the airports, right? Which was basically, I think their main viewership. So, there's why, let him go, let him fall, and let him just be a thing. People say, and let people forget about that there ever was a CNN. See, that's how you win. But see, people are like, they got to talk about them. You watch these shows, these guys who have high ratings on YouTube and stuff. And all they do is they're even on Fox and stuff. What are they doing? They do it on the other side. MSNBC does the same thing. In other words, they're talking about the other announcer or another thing that was on. Did you see what was on The View? Or here's what Whoopi Goldberg said. Don't you understand, if you don't mention Whoopi Goldberg's name, out of sight, out of mind, a year or two down the road, the average person will go, Whoopi who? Right? It's like if you ask a kid now, Paul McCartney, who's he? But if you ask somebody 20 years ago, it's like the Beatles, Paul McCartney, you don't know who he is? Well, ask a kid in college right now, on the street interview. Paul McCartney, I don't know who he is. You see what I mean? Out of sight, out of mind. It's basic psychology, right? Human behavior. It's just the way things work. And I don't understand the logic behind it. So in many ways, Trump has kept mainstream media alive, and he has the power to basically end that, right? And you have the power to end the rest of this. And same with this Hannity and these Tuckers. Instead of here's a clip from the show, that I saw on CNN. Or he'll have a guest on, and the guest will be talking, and he'll be criticizing somebody from another network and another. That they see they're propping up. They're giving there's other things to just talk about the issue, not the cult of personality. You see? They've created politics as pop culture. It's 24/7. So when people say, "Oh, I'm so tired of Trump, 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 Russia, Russia, Russia," now it's Ukraine, 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 right? Or the flu, right? COVID, COVID, COVID. Yeah, but who's propping it up? Who's keeping that stuff alive? Why are you talking about that, guy with the name begins with the F? I don't even think you can say his name on YouTube without getting something. It's like, stop talking about the guy. Ignore him. Right? Ignore him. And they go away. They lose their influence. Right? It's like that old Hollywood thing, any publicity is good publicity. You see? See, it doesn't matter if Tucker Carlson is insulting somebody on the Rachel Maddow show, or Rachel Maddow is insulting Tucker Carlson. Do you understand? Any publicity is good publicity. they're each propping up one another, right? That Lemonhead guy on CNN is talking about Hannity, and Hannity's criticizing the Lemonhead guy or something. They're propping up one another. Do you understand? When you're using Twitter to argue over a point, you're propping up Twitter and the person that you're doing. Just move over to Getter and do it. Like I say, I have no interest in the thing, but the site is much better and much more sophisticated, and it's freer than Twitter. It's the same with Rumble. And if Rumble gets enough people on there and they get their bandwidth, it's, you can watch videos there now. They have a way where they're just taking the videos. They've been pulling all my videos off of YouTube, and they're now on their servers. It seems a process. But apparently they have the money and they've got backers. So their bandwidth is only going to get better and better. So you have the power. That's the thing you have to understand. You have the power. And people don't understand that. And so they're sitting there and they're trying to play it safe. Right? Forget about YouTube. You say, well, what are you doing on it? I have no frickin' idea. I have no frickin' idea.
Really funny. Really funny.
Yeah. No, I'm on my way out. I'm going to Rumble. I'm ready to pay the $10 if they don't. I'm waiting for them to do free live streaming, okay? Because I'm a cheapskate, all right? But I mean, I'll pay the $10, maybe next week. If they don't get their act together, I'll pay the $10 and I'll just move over there next week. Because supposedly this open source program I'm using that allows me to have all this cool shit up is they can accept that. It'll work. So I'll just, generate my program from there. And unlike other people, I won't put it on YouTube. You see? Forget it. I'll just post it on Getter. You see? You have to make a commitment. All right? Cold shrug. You have to make a commitment. You have to, if you want change, if you want positive change, you have to be the instrument of that change. And you just got to do it. Like I say, if you want to keep that cigarette in your underwear drawer, that's fine, dandy. You don't have to close the account, right? I'm not going to close my account unless they close it for me. I don't see why they would. I haven't violated any terms of service. But if they close it, they close it. But if they don't, yeah, I'll leave it open. But I'm not, it's time to make the move. It's time to topple mainstream media. And in future shows, I won't even be mentioning those litany of alphabet networks that I mentioned previously on this show. In fact, as of this moment on, I'm no longer going to mention any of those. And I think you should do the same. In other words, if you want to discuss the issue of Ukraine or Biden, Kamala Harris, right, or anything, why do you have to mention someone from a particular network, a podcast, a vlog, right? A TV show, radio program, or whatever? You don't. You see? So why are you? Because every time you do, you prop them up. Yeah, that was, like I say, that was that whole thing about fake news that Trump did. He propped them up, and their ratings went high because he propped them up. It wasn't them covering him that was making their ratings go up. It was the fact that he kept keeping them in other words, it should have been out of sight, out of mind. And he had the opportunity to do it, and he didn't. And he had the public forum to do it, and he didn't. So I blame him for that, for keeping them alive as long as he did. And I just hope he has the sense now to drop whatever efforts they've been doing and channel their money over, if they invested money in this app, and put that app into Getter. Okay? The repercussions of that would reverberate throughout the constitutional republic. It would start putting the first cracks in the egg of that phoenix that ultimately might rise up again. You know, the birth of an egg. You know, first there starts a little crack begins. And that's what needs to be done. And you have that power, too, to further open up that egg of the phoenix that's going to rise from the ashes. It's all up to you. It's that simple. And people don't do it. And it's the same thing with this infrastructure stuff, too, which I talked about that, and I want to end on that. You know, because it's not all about politics. Life's about happiness and survival and thrive. Survive and thrive. You know, we have to address our infrastructure in this country, and it's not going to come from legislation. And we have to address crime in this country, and it's not going to come from making laws, right? Because we already have laws. People don't follow the rules. That's why they're in jail. There are murders. There's 90,000 homicides a year in the U.S. Most of them go unsolved. So obviously, but they're homicides, they're laws. It's a crime to commit murder. But 90,000 homicides are committed each year. So laws don't work. In some areas, the laws are real tough. Still don't work. It's like people who talk about gun laws. The places that have the strictest gun laws have the highest, in many cases, have the highest gun crimes. And then where they don't use guns, they use knives, right? They'll bang you off the head with a trophy, a bowling trophy, and kill you. Do you understand? A crook is a crook is a crook. A criminal's a criminal is a criminal. Laws, we have all the laws on the books. We have a constitution. We have a Bill of Rights. We have all that stuff. Like I say, it's all sitting there. It's just not being paid attention to. And that's where you, the people, come in, okay? You know, we, the people, you know, I'm retired. I'm doing my share. I'm trying to rationalize and reason with you. I don't have to do this because I'm not monetized. And yeah, I got a shirt there, a hoodie or whatever. You want to buy it, buy it. You know what? Nobody bought it. Okay? Nobody bought it. I got 10 books out. I'm lucky if I sold a handful of them. Because you know why? Because people don't give a crap. Right? They're self-centered. People are too self-centered today, and they're too afraid to make a commitment to do something, to take a step forward. Right? Let somebody else do it, and then I'll follow the leader. Right? It's like the same thing with the Trump rallies and stuff. It's a cult of personality. He's going to save us. He was president for 4 fucking years, okay? We had a Republican Congress and a Republican Senate, all right? And people say, stuff happened and we started to build the wall and, we were tough on China and, yeah. Yeah, and Biden came in with the stack of basically, that picture of a stack of executive orders and various policies. And now look at the state of the country in the world right now. So basically nothing was accomplished, okay? How many calls were there to get rid of those people over at the FBI and the DOJ, that they were all basically shills and that they were all screwing us over, right? You're telling me he didn't know that? He's an intelligent guy. Okay? All right? So the point of the matter is, it's time you wake up, all right? And like, stop with the cult of personality. Stop with politics as pop culture. Stop propping up the media in general, the network media. You can talk about all the issues of the day, all right? Till you're blue in the face. Just don't mention a network announcer, a cable news announcer, or somebody, from some particular place. Just tell the story. And if you can't tell a story, if you can't run a podcast with your own slide, okay? What did I do? I showed you the weather. You see the weather here? You know where I got that? Our taxpayer dollars, and I paid taxpayer dollars for 40-some years, okay? My taxpayer dollars went to that. I showed you the weather from my own. I didn't take it from the Weather Channel or something. No, that's NOAA. Okay? This graphic here, I made it. My own. It's my graphic. Okay? You see this? That's mine, my graphic. All right? Do you understand? This, it's my graphic. Okay? I created it. All right? I'm not propping up a picture of a clip from somebody's tweet on Twitter, right? Or some a video of a clip from some show on TV or a cable show, and then basing my show on criticizing or laughing at that individual and thinking that's accomplishing something. No, that's doing nothing. That's stagnation. That's why we're in the space we are. Because some of the biggest names, all right, that you support, right, probably even give them frickin' money, are the people who got us in this position right now. So it's time to stop mentioning the names of the networks, stop mentioning the names of the announcers, stop posting and reposting things on your sites from them for the sake of criticizing them. You can talk about the issue yourself. Do you see? And, why don't you do like what the papers do, And if you have to say, an unnamed, you just mention an unnamed source. Or sources. Sources say, or it's been reported on me on other media. Other media have reported. That's, if someone would call you into question or something like that, well, then you could direct message them or private message them where it came from if someone called you out. All right? And say, no, well, okay, yeah, here. But what you put out in the public eye is you have to make these people invisible. You take the power away from the politician and the media moguls by making them invisible. You don't quote them. You don't repost their things, whether you're trying to make fun of them or argue their point or not. You can still argue the point. I did it yesterday, right? I said, I showed a map of Ukraine, which I got, right? I took the graphic and put it inside a laptop to make a point. All right? It was my own. I didn't take it from some other source. You can do it. All right? You don't even need expensive software. I have a Mac. I used Preview to circle a spot and put some text on it. Heck, I use Preview for this graphic that you're seeing on the screen now. It's not Photoshop. I refuse to pay the extortion fee to Adobe for their cloud service. I own a copy of Photoshop on my other computer. This one over here.
Your papers, please.
Right? And this thing that everybody's going along with. Right? You have the power. You just don't know it, or you're just afraid. You want to be a follower, right? See, I'm not saying you have to be the leader. I'm just saying, but you don't have to be a follower. Just be your own person, right? You don't have to lead the charge. Just be your own person, right? Be your own person. Pursue happiness, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Like I said before, are you happy? And if you're not happy, do the things that'll make you happy. But don't steal other people's. You see, what you're doing is you're hanging on the coattails of people. You're either involved with the cult of personality, looking for some political figure or some figure to like do it for you, right? Or you're just like waiting to see, where's everybody gonna go? Well, it's so idiotic, when you think about it. Do you get that? Do you understand? If you want a raspberry ice cream and you're at the store, you just go up to the counter and say, I'll take raspberry. Look at these trucks, coal trucks. See, I'm criticizing, the Tesla concept, the people who drive electric cars, by saying, you see, the Tesla car runs on coal and fracked gas. So you could write stuff about that, but then you don't even need to mention Tesla. All right? So let me take that back and say the electric car. You see, this is what I'm trying to get at. Think about this. This is how we defeat them. Right? Forget about the brand names, forget about the characters, forget about the whoever the announcers are, forget about the networks they're affiliated with, and forget about the companies that they're associated with or the organizations that they're a part of. Deal with the issue. And the issues are, if you want to say we don't belong in Ukraine, then we don't belong in Ukraine. You don't have to quote somebody else. If you want to say, that Biden looks like he's like losing his mind, just say Biden's losing his mind. Don't say that some media is covering for him or that this, that, the other. You see? Yeah, just do it. This is the problem people have. You don't have to be, you think, well, I'm not that creative. What creative? You got ideas. You can look at something and get an inspiration from it and an idea. But the point of the matter, the issues are plain to see what's going on right now. The craziness, the madness is you're subject to all the madness that's going on in the world right now and in this country. You know what's going on. You don't need you don't need to like retweet, repost, or put a clip from something. You don't need to do it. It's like these people are afraid to put their face on. Look, I put my face on. I'm wearing a flannel shirt today. There's other times I got crazy and I was wearing a Santa hat and doing all kinds of fun. I wore a dashiki on Kwanzaa. All right. Hey, you could do whatever the hell you want to do. But the point of the matter is, just get out there if you get and get your voice heard. That's what we need. We need voices. And we need honest tweets. We don't need retweets. We need tweets. And we don't need tweets. We need getters, whatever you call them over there. You know what I mean? Just do it. I'm going to go here, just quick go over there for 1 second. I want to show this for somebody who hasn't really looked at this, All right. Let me just take you here real quick. And just to show you. And I'm going to put, you can see I have a Getter account. All right. That's how simple it is. And there you go. And there's my little laptop thing from yesterday. Okay? And there's a little reposted that I posted from Tulsi Gabbard, where she said, the Biden administration is ready to go to war with Russia to save Ukraine's corrupt called democracy while destroying our own democracy here. And there's my hypocrisy for profit. Okay? And then you see they've got news over here on the right, and they've got some apps. Just do it. It's way better than Twitter. It looks better. And for you people, apparently they have a dark mode too. Right? If that's your thing. I'm not a big person on dark mode. But there you go. You see? You get it? All right? Just do it. You know? End of Twitter. End of censorship. That's how simple it is. All you do, everybody's over there. Everybody's over there. You know, so go. Same with Rumble. Everybody's over in Rumble now. Just go. All right, man.
Good morning.
Have a great day, and thanks for watching. Visit TonyCaravanLive.com or ROCKFLUX.com. I have my own websites. And I've got links to all the places that I'm currently at there, and I will, as things change and progress. There's copies of my books you can get on Amazon. You know, I've got things in case the power goes out, and of course I've got these shirts and hoodies and all this other stuff. Nobody buys the stuff, but, you know, if you did buy it, it would let me know that you appreciate and you get what I'm talking about, and you spread the word, and that might just help make this channel grow. Wherever it may end up residing, which most likely looks like it's going to be Rumble. Talk to you tomorrow.